So BaseHead allows us to import and export metadata using text files. Now this can be handy if we need to import some files from a third-party rival program or a database library from another source. We might have the information stored in a text file and we need to get that into BaseHead and link it up to our files. This can also be a useful tool if we need to export data from BaseHead. We might need to export a library, or we just need to export data and edit it externally. We can export data, do whatever edits we need to, and then re-import it back into BaseHead. Now, BaseHead supports text delimited files such as CSV, TSV, and standard text files. The delimiters supported are commas, tabs, and semicolons. So to access the text import export menu, we go up to the View Help menu, and then we go down to Import Export Text File, or we can press F7. Here we have the import section at the top and the export section at the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at importing a unsupported text file, and then we'll have a look at importing a rival text file that is recognized automatically. So for this example, I'm going to import an old Boom library. So I've got a little test library set up here, just a few files and a library file. So it should be noted that modern Boom library files have supported metadata in them now, but for older files or for any other type of external library, we can use this method to get our data into BaseHead. So in this example, what I want to do is I want to import these files. Now these files don't have any metadata within the files. What I want to do is populate the database in BaseHead with the metadata that's included with this library file. So this involves first importing the files into BaseHead and then importing this data and matching it up to the files. Now, because this doesn't have a folder structure or anything, we're just going to import this in a very simple way. So importing the files first and then importing the data. If we had a more detailed library with a text file that also included path information as well, so either folder information for PC or path information for Mac, then we could actually import the file directly without having to create a database first. But for this example, what we're going to do is create our database first, get our files into BaseHead, and then populate that information. So first we need to import the files. So I'm just going to simply import these to a library called Boom. And select the files on my drive. So on my drive here, the Boom. With the files imported, we can see that we have just the basic information from the files. So there's no metadata filled in yet. What we want to do is now import the metadata from our text file. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use a template which is available from BaseHead. There's probably a link in the description. And the template file is simply a blank template with the required headers. So the important thing that we need to do is make sure that the header information that BaseHead is looking for is valid for the information that we're importing. So the template file that we've got is simply a Google Sheet. We can use any spreadsheet software that we're comfortable with. I'm going to be using Google Sheets because it's free and it's simple to use. This template file has a template for PC and for Mac. The only difference between the two template files is the PC has the folder location and the Mac has the path location. This is only applicable if you want to import all of your files in a single process. So if you don't want to go through the process of first creating a database in BaseHead and then importing your data, you want to do it all as a single import, then we need to make sure that the path or the folder location is correct for the files. In this case, we don't need to worry about that because we've already imported our data. We just want to get the metadata in. So to do this, what I'm going to do is import my text file. And if we just click on the upload tab here, I can take the Boom library. So just to quickly show, this Boom library has file name. It has a number of fields that are useful to us: description, category, subcategory. there's information here that we don't need to import, such as the channel layout. BaseHead has already read the files and recognized the channels and the sample rate, so we don't need to worry about things like that. A lot of the other information, I just simply won't bother. Just carry across the information that's important to you. So we're going to import this just by dragging it in. And in my case, what I want to do is insert a new sheet into my spreadsheet. With our information imported, what we want to do is carry this across into our template. So for this, all we need to do is copy the information. We don't need to copy the header because the header is what we have in our template. That's what we need to copy the data into. So all we need to do is match the data we've got in our text file with the header of our template. So I'm just going to hide the Mac sheet because we're not using that, and we're just going to copy the relevant details across from our text file into our template. Okay, so we've copied our information across. You'll see that we've just copied across the information that's applicable to our particular needs. So this is the information that I want to import to the files that I've already got. From here, we just need to export the data, and we can export to either CSV or TSV. TSV is probably recommended in any case that's possible, just to make sure that any commas that we might have in our data don't disrupt the import process. And I'm just going to save this to my desktop. Now going back to BaseHead, we want to go to the import export text and select the file to import. Now BaseHead will automatically recognize the format. It's recognized it as a tab delimited file. And what we're going to do is make sure that if we've already got a library created for our files actually exist in our database, we want to update and merge the data. Now, if we don't have path information, we can select to try and link by file names only. This might take a little bit longer as it's got to scan through every file rather than matching up the path. And what we can do is, if we don't have any path information in our import, we can try and link the files using just the file name. Now, keep in mind that if you have quite a large number of files to import data for, it could take a while. So just exercise a bit of patience. And so all of our records have been imported. The data has been merged with the 9 files that we have there. And selecting the library, we can now see that all of our data is now populated. So now let's look at importing this file as a single process. So what we want to do is have the path information for the files in the file, because instead of creating a library and importing the data, we want to do this as a single process. So this is good for creating an entire backup. The only thing is we need to have an accurate location to all of our files. So for this, I'm going to delete my library that I just created. And what I'm going to try and do is, before I modify the file, I'm just going to try and import this again. But this time I'm going to import and try and create a new import. Now this has generated an error because it cannot find the path to the files. So we can hold down the modify key and then press OK to actually open up the log, which will explain what the error is. But in this case, we know that it's because we don't have any path information. So what we need to do is just fix that up. Heading back to our import template, what we need to do is fill in the folder location information to our files. So this is the location to the files that I have for this library. So I'm just going to copy this location, paste it into the text file, and this is the same location for all files. Obviously, if we had subfolders for these files as well, we would need to make sure that all the subfolders are correct as well. And now back in BaseHead, we're going to import this file again, but this time we're going to select the Create New Import option. So our records have all been imported, and we have the library created with all of our files. So that's the two different ways of importing our library. When we import using the create new library method, the name of the text file that we use to import is going to be the name of our import library. And of course, we can simply right click and rename that if we need to. Okay, so now we're going to look at importing files from a rival Sound Manager program. The BaseHead has a built-in mechanism to automatically detect the export format from a rival program. Just consult the BaseHead manual for which fields need to be included in your data for this to automatically work. One of the benefits to this, as opposed to using the previous third-party text import method, is that this will be detected automatically and we don't need to modify any fields. We don't need to use the template. We can just import the file straight away and all the relevant information will be imported in a single process. So for this test, I've got my exported files here. I have done a text export from my rival program and the format is in a tab delimited file. We can see that we have our header information and we have all of the relevant data in the text files here as well. You'll notice that scrolling through, we do also have a path to our files. So this will be the only thing that we need to make sure that this path is valid, especially if we're using an old export. Now this is a really simple process. If we have simply done the export from our rival program, we will have our files, we will have our text import. So all we need to do in BaseHead is go to the import text file and select the text file to import. And upon importing this particular file, BaseHead has recognized that this is from a rival program and it will do its best to automatically resolve all the information that's in that text file and import that into a new import library. And so this is imported. All of the information seems to have imported correctly. And now if we select our newly created library, we can see the information and the files have all imported for us. Next, we're going to have a look at exporting our data from BaseHead so that we can edit the details in our spreadsheet software and then re-import that. So this is very useful for if we want to make large amounts of edits or we feel more comfortable making edits in a spreadsheet program. We can export the information and then just re-import it to update our changes. We can also use this method to export a collection of files with the metadata included if we don't have the information burnt into our files. So in the export section of the utility, what we want to do is select our export format, whatever the format of our target application supports. Wherever possible, it is recommended to try and use TSV. That's a tab delimited file. And then select which records that we want to export. So we can export everything in our database, or we can select the current search results. So we can narrow down the files that we want to export by doing a search or selecting a library and then selecting those current search results. That's what I'm going to select here. And then which fields do we want to export? So we can export the currently displayed fields in the results list, or we can export the current fields that are showing in our details pane. Or we can just export all fields. Now I'm going to export all fields in this case. Now our database has been exported to a text file. We can import that into a spreadsheet program and edit whatever we need to. So I'm just going to use Google Sheets again, select to import a file, and again, just drag the file in. And now we don't need a template or anything in this instance because we've exported directly from BaseHead. We just want to create a brand new spreadsheet, detect the separator type automatically, and convert the text to numbers. We want to select no. And so here are all our files listed in our spreadsheet here. What I'm going to do in this case, just for an example, I'm going to change the artist to my name. And I'm just going to fill that down through all the artist fields. And I also might change the category to test. And so once we've finished whatever changes we need to make, we simply need to download this file again or save it and re-import this back into BaseHead. Back in BaseHead, what we want to do is import the modified file and then make sure that we select to merge and update the changes. Simply click the import button and our records are all imported and merged. And so we can see the category and the artist fields have now been updated.